June 24th, 1945, Moscow, Red Square. Georgy Zhukov rides a white horse through Red Square to preside over the victory parade. He is 48 years old. He accepted Germany's unconditional surrender 3 weeks earlier. The crowd's response when he appears is unlike anything seen in that square before. Stalin watches from the Lenin mausoleum. He is not on a horse. He is not the one they are cheering. How do you eliminate the most celebrated soldier in your country's history without making him a martyr? If you want more stories like this, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. December 1st, 1896. Strelkovka. Georgy Konstantinovich Zhukov is born in a two-room peasant hut in the village of Strelkovka, approximately 100 kilometers southwest of Moscow. His father is a cobbler. His mother works the land. The family lives in genuine poverty, no electricity, no running water, a dirt floor in winter. He completes 3 years of parish schooling before being sent at age 11 to Moscow, apprenticed to his uncle, a furrier in the Zamoskvorechye district. He sleeps in a workshop dormitory with other apprentices and attends evening classes on his own initiative. There is nothing in his early life that suggests what he will become. In August 1915, at 18, he is conscripted into the Imperial Russian Army and assigned to a cavalry unit on the Eastern Front. He serves well enough to be awarded the Cross of St. George twice, once for capturing a German officer during a reconnaissance mission, once for holding a position under sustained artillery fire. When the revolution comes in 1917 and the Imperial Army collapses, Zhukov makes the decision that defines the rest of his life. He joins the Bolsheviks. He enlists in the Red Army in 1918, fights through the Civil War, is wounded twice, contracts typhus, and rises to squadron commander by 1920. He is 23 years old and has already survived more than most men see in a lifetime. Throughout the 1920s, he studies. He reads military theory, follows the operational doctrine being developed inside the Red Army by theorists like Mikhail Tukhachevsky, and attends the Frunze Military Academy from 1928 to 1931. He commands a cavalry division by 1934, a corps by 1936. He is, by every internal measure, one of the most capable officers in the Soviet system. He is also, by 1937, one of the most endangered. The purge that nearly destroyed an army. 1937 is the year the Red Army nearly ceases to exist as a professional institution. Stalin's Great Purge reaches the military with a ferocity that exceeds even what it does to the party apparatus. Marshal Mikhail Tukhachevsky, the most innovative military thinker in the Soviet system, the architect of the Red Army's modern operational doctrine, is arrested in May 1937, tortured into signing a confession, and shot on June 12th. He is 43 years old. In the 18 months that follow, 3 of the 5 Soviet marshals are executed. 13 of 15 army commanders are executed. 50 of 57 corps commanders are executed. 154 of 186 divisional commanders are executed. The institutional memory of an entire military generation is simply erased. Zhukov survives. He keeps his head down, avoids internal politics, and delivers results in every posting he holds. He is not yet famous enough to be perceived as a threat. The purge doesn't reach him before it exhausts itself. Then, in June 1939, he receives orders that will change everything. June 1939. Mongolia, the making of a legend. Stalin sends Zhukov east to take command of Soviet forces along the Khalkhin-Gol River, on the disputed border between Mongolia and Manchuria, where an undeclared war with Japan has been deteriorating since May. Zhukov arrives to find the situation near collapse. He immediately begins planning something the Red Army has not yet attempted at scale. A full combined arms operation using massive armor, artillery, and air power in a coordinated double envelopment. The logistics alone are remarkable. The nearest rail base is 750 kilometers away. Zhukov organizes a fleet of thousands of trucks to move tens of thousands of tons of material across roadless Mongolian steppe. He assembles his forces in secret, using dummy radio traffic and false defensive manuals, distributed deliberately to confuse Japanese intelligence. He chooses August 20th for the attack, a Sunday, because Japanese officers are traditionally off base on weekends. At 5:45 a.m., Soviet artillery and hundreds of aircraft hit Japanese positions simultaneously. The attack achieves complete surprise. Soviet armor drives around both flanks of the Japanese 23rd Infantry Division, while infantry pins the center. Within days, the encirclement is complete. Within 10 days, the Japanese force inside the pocket is destroyed. The 23rd Infantry Division loses roughly 3/4 of its frontline strength. The battle ends with a ceasefire on September 15, 1939. The strategic consequences extend far beyond Mongolia. Japan's Imperial Army, shaken by the defeat, abandons its northern expansion strategy and redirects towards Southeast Asia and the Pacific instead. In April 1941, Japan signs a neutrality pact with the Soviet Union. That single decision allows Stalin, in December 1941, to transfer veteran Siberian divisions westward to the defense of Moscow. Those divisions helped stop the German advance within sight of the Kremlin. What Zhukov does in the Mongolian steppe in the summer of 1939 directly shapes the outcome of the Battle of Moscow 2 years later. That chain of consequence is almost never discussed when people talk about the turning points of the Second World War. Zhukov returns to Moscow a hero. In January 1941, Stalin appoints him chief of the General Staff. He is 44 years old. He has never worked in Moscow before. He is about to find out exactly what that means. June 22, 1941. The catastrophe. Germany invades at 3:15 in the morning. Zhukov, as chief of the General Staff, receives the first reports at his desk and drives to the Kremlin to wake Stalin personally. Stalin, who has spent months dismissing overwhelming intelligence about the German buildup, is initially unable to accept that what he is being told is real. He asks whether it might be a provocation. It is not. It is the largest military operation in history, and it is dismantling the Red Army in real time. The first weeks are catastrophic beyond any prepared response. The Wehrmacht advances at speeds that make coherent defense nearly impossible. Entire Soviet armies are surrounded and destroyed. By the end of June, Germany has advanced 300 kilometers. By mid-July, Army Group Center is at Smolensk. By October, it is at the gates of Moscow. In the first 6 months, the Red Army loses approximately 4 million men killed or captured. In early August 1941, Zhukov submits a memorandum to Stalin recommending the voluntary evacuation of Kiev to prevent the encirclement of Soviet forces in Ukraine. Stalin removes him as chief of the General Staff the same day and sends him to command the reserve front. 6 weeks later, German forces complete precisely the encirclement Zhukov had predicted. The Kiev pocket results in the capture of approximately 660,000 Soviet soldiers, the largest encirclement in military history. Stalin says nothing about the memorandum. But from this point forward, when Zhukov makes a military recommendation, Stalin listens. In September, Zhukov is sent to Leningrad on the verge of falling. He reorganizes the defense and stabilizes the city within 2 weeks. In October, Stalin recalls him to Moscow. Zhukov takes command of the Western Front, holds his reserves for exactly the right moment, and on December 5, 1941, with temperatures at -35°C, launches a counteroffensive that drives Army Group Center back from Moscow for the first time. It is the first major German defeat of the war. The myth of Wehrmacht invincibility is broken. Over the following 3 years, his name appears at virtually every decisive Soviet engagement. He coordinates Operation Uranus at Stalingrad in November 1942, the pincer movement that encircles the German Sixth Army, replicating at continental scale exactly what he had done at Khalkhin Gol. He commands at Kursk in July 1943, the largest tank battle in history, which destroys the last major German offensive capability on the Eastern Front. He leads the first Belarusian front in Operation Bagration in June 1944, the operation that erases Army Group Center and advances Soviet lines 400 kilometers in 6 weeks. And in April 1945, he commands the assault on Berlin itself. Rokossovsky, the Soviet general who was geographically better positioned to take Berlin, later recalled what Stalin said when he was told Zhukov would lead the final assault instead of him. He asked Stalin why. Stalin replied, "This is not a disfavor, this is politics," and hung up. May 8, 1945, Karlshorst, Berlin. The German instrument of surrender is signed at 22:43 in a former engineering school in the Berlin suburb of Karlshorst. The Soviet representative presiding over the ceremony is Georgy Zhukov. He sits at the center of the table. Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel leads the German delegation in, signs the document, and raises his marshal's baton in formal salute. Zhukov does not return it. Germany has surrendered unconditionally. The war in Europe is over. 3 weeks later, on June 24th, Zhukov presides over the victory parade in Red Square on that white horse. Stalin watches from the mausoleum. The crowd's response to Zhukov is overwhelming, the kind of reaction that makes the men on the other side of the square very quiet and very thoughtful. Stalin does not ride a horse. He does not enter the square. The man the crowd is cheering is not him. This moment is the beginning of the end of Zhukov's career. The destruction of a marshal. Stalin moves immediately but carefully. He cannot shoot Zhukov. The man is too famous, too recently celebrated, too visible internationally. Eisenhower considers him a personal friend and has said so publicly. Any action requires a pretext that the Soviet system can make look credible. So Stalin does what he always does. He uses the apparatus. The pretext is built through the MGB. Air Marshal Alexander Novikov is arrested and interrogated at Lefortovo prison until he signs a statement accusing Zhukov of Bonapartism, of seeking personal glory, of diminishing Stalin's role in the victories they had won together. Years later, Novikov describes what happened during those interrogations in the clearest possible terms. They broke him, sleepless nights, endless pressure. He signed it to make it stop. That forced statement is what gives Stalin the grounds he needs. In early June 1946, Zhukov is summoned to a meeting of the Supreme Military Council. Stalin arrives, according to witnesses, looking like a black cloud. He tosses a document across the table without a word. Most of the generals in the room keep their heads down. A few defend Zhukov. It doesn't matter. The outcome was decided before the meeting began. Zhukov is stripped of command of Soviet ground forces and assigned to lead the Odessa military district, a regional posting 600 kilometers from Moscow with no strategic significance and almost no troops. From the man who accepted Germany's surrender to the administrator of a second-rate provincial command in a single afternoon. The Odessa posting is followed within 2 years by something even more deliberate. In January 1948, MGB officers search Zhukov's apartment and dacha on Stalin's orders. What they find is documented in exhaustive detail in a formal report submitted to Stalin by MGB chief Viktor Abakumov. 7 rail carriages worth of German furniture that Zhukov had been shipping back to the Soviet Union had already been impounded in 1946. The dacha search turns up over 4,000 meters of silk and velvet fabrics, 323 furs, 44 carpets removed from German palaces, 55 paintings, silver cutlery, crystal ware, gold rings, and gemstones. Abakumov's report to Stalin describes the dacha as a museum, not a single Soviet book anywhere on the shelves. Nothing of Soviet origin in the entire house, he writes, except the paths leading to the front door. Zhukov's written defense is the response of a man trying to survive rather than mount an argument. He writes that he shouldn't have collected all that useless junk, that he assumed nobody needed it anymore, that he regrets it entirely. He swears as a Bolshevik that he will not repeat such errors. He signs it. He sends it. It makes no difference. The looting charges are real. Zhukov did take things from Germany. So did virtually every Soviet general at every level. The practice was widespread, informally tolerated, and institutionally ignored for years. Stalin uses it when it becomes useful. Before 1946, it sits in a file. The moment Zhukov becomes a political problem, the file opens. In February 1948, Zhukov is transferred again, this time to command the Ural Military District in Sverdlovsk, 1,700 kilometers east of Moscow. One historian describes the move as a relegation from a second-rate to a fifth-rate posting. He lives there under continuous NKVD surveillance that he knows is constant and that is designed for him to know is constant. He suffers a heart attack that year and spends a month in the hospital. The officers who served under him carefully keep their distance. His name begins disappearing from official war histories. Paintings depicting the victory parade are quietly altered to remove his likeness. Throughout his years in the Urals, the MGB runs a sustained investigation aimed at producing material for a formal prosecution. 2 former subordinates are held in Lefortovo prison and interrogated repeatedly for statements implicating Zhukov in conspiracy against the state. The file grows through 1949, 1950, 1951, and 1952. Stalin never moves against him formally. He dies on March 5, 1953, without pulling the trigger. Given how the investigation was progressing, the distance between Zhukov's survival and his destruction was likely measured in months. The return and the second fall. Stalin's death changes everything overnight. The post-Stalin leadership needs the military's institutional weight to neutralize the most dangerous figure in the succession struggle. Lavrenti Beria, who commands the entire security apparatus and has been the operational instrument of Zhukov's persecution for nearly a decade. On June 26, 1953, at a meeting of the party Presidium, Beria is arrested. Zhukov is physically present in the room. He moves behind Beria himself, takes hold of him as the arrest is announced, and pins his arms. The man who oversaw Zhukov's surveillance for 6 years, who built the file intended to destroy him, is arrested by the man he was watching. Beria is tried and executed by shooting in December 1953. Zhukov is appointed Deputy Minister of Defense in 1953 and Minister of Defense in 1955. On his 60th birthday, in 1956, he receives his 4th Gold Star as Hero of the Soviet Union, the only person in Soviet history to hold 4. He is fully rehabilitated. His portrait is back on the walls. His name is back in the histories. As Minister of Defense, Zhukov moves with the same directness that always makes the party apparatus uncomfortable. He reopens the cases of military commanders executed during the Great Purge and pushes for their official rehabilitation. He demands that the political agencies within the military report to him before the party. He supports the rehabilitation of Tukhachevsky, the man Stalin shot in 1937, the man whose operational doctrine Zhukov had built his entire career executing. These moves generate exactly the enemies you'd expect them to generate. The same dynamic that destroyed him under Stalin begins forming again under Khrushchev. In October 1957, while Zhukov is traveling abroad on a naval visit to Yugoslavia and Albania, a plenum is assembled in Moscow and waiting for him on his return. He is charged, for the third time in his career, with Bonapartism. He is removed as Minister of Defense and forced into retirement. He is 61 years old. He will never hold another official position. The final years. Zhukov spends the next 15 years writing. His memoirs, reminiscences, and reflections go through multiple rounds of censorship before publication in 1969. Significant material is removed. His accounts of Stalin's failures in the opening weeks of the war. His reconstruction of battles that contradict the official Soviet narrative. His assessments of commanders who remain politically protected. The published version is a managed document. The full, unedited manuscript appears only after the Soviet Union's collapse. Despite the censorship, the book becomes an immediate bestseller and is translated into dozens of languages. Zhukov, stripped of every official position, turns out to be more widely read than the entire propaganda apparatus that spent a decade trying to make him disappear. He is rehabilitated again under Brezhnev in 1964. He is invited to stand in the tribune of the Lenin Mausoleum and review the parade in Red Square. He lives long enough to become, once more, the official symbol of Soviet military victory, the same symbol that Stalin spent 7 years trying to erase. Georgy Zhukov dies on June 18, 1974, at the age of 77. He receives a state funeral. His ashes are interred in the Kremlin Wall necropolis, within 50 meters of the mausoleum from which Stalin once watched a parade and decided that the man on the white horse had to disappear. What Stalin understood, and what every Soviet leader after him confirmed by repeating the same mistake, is that a man capable of saving Moscow, encircling Stalingrad, and taking Berlin cannot simply be managed like an ordinary official. Zhukov's danger was never his politics. He was never a political operator. It was never his personal ambition either. There is no evidence he ever sought power beyond his military role. The threat was simpler and more fundamental than that. When Soviet citizens thought about who had actually won the war, the answer that came to mind was not the name on the mausoleum. Stalin's solution was, in its own way, elegant. He didn't arrest Zhukov. He didn't shoot him. He put him somewhere distant and unimportant, under surveillance, alive and controlled, where his fame could quietly dissipate among the garrison troops of Odessa and Sverdlovsk. It worked for 7 years. It would have worked indefinitely, given a little more time. Stalin died first. Zhukov came back. The man who won the war outlived the man who spent a decade trying to bury him, and then lived long enough to watch himself become, against everyone's intentions, exactly the historical monument that Stalin had worked so hard to prevent.